Welcome back. I'm Tyler, you're watching Scarfing Scarves, and welcome to the 70th installment of Last Week Lolita News. At the top of the segment, this show apparently can't go 2 seconds without having to report on the antics of drooling degenerates. Some people should have been born as horny poodles, a sentiment which is actually offensive to poodles as one of the smartest dog breeds in existence, given most preverts have the intelligence of a loaf of bread. A smushed loaf of bread. A loaf of bread so divorced from freshness and taste that it has ceased to resemble bread in the slightest. A loaf of bread that someone has taken out, stuck their dick in, and fracked to completion. Smart people know that said bread is not fit for consumption any longer and should not be displayed in any store ever. Idiots would say it expands the definition of bread and would happily gobble it up. I swear to God, the trauma I just put you through is going to make sense in a second. It all started in Closet of Frills, and more specifically with a post that I will not show you because the person behind it is a fetishist attention whore who would love nothing better than to see themselves be remotely relevant to the EGL community. They will remain a mediocre gnat on the ass of actual infamy until further notice. And for the sake of understanding what the devil I'm on about, all you need to know about the cord they posted is that they were wearing a 9-inch nails crop top, a skirt, dog collars, and a horsebit contraption over their mouth that looked 1 part dildo harness for the face and 1 part ring gag. The first holds a dildo to your mouth, the latter lets it in, and neither are remotely appropriate to wear on your face in a Lolita fashion group where the entry age is listed as 13 goddamn years old. A concept one would think would be obvious for anyone who wasn't recently hit by a truck full of stupid. An assurance that proved incorrect given that swaths of knuckle draggers jumped up to praise it and compared someone wearing sex gear on their face to the Kara and Gothic and Lolita Bible snaps of yore. They argued with any sane person who said their outfit wasn't Lolita in the most condescending way possible, an argument that amounted to this dick strap is totally fine in Lolita fashion because people wore corsets and harnesses in the GLBs. Anyone who thinks decorative corsets and some leather straps are on the same level as wearing a phallus holder on your face needs to get checked for lead poisoning. For frack's sake, it's called the Gothic and Lolita Bible. Not everything in there is going to be Lolita unless you're totally on board with calling this thing EGL. Go home, everyone. These mouth-breathing degenerate defenders think panty shots are oh so Rory. The appearance of corsets has a history long before use in any kind of fetish wear. Body harnesses are publicly acceptable fancy straps, only a few steps edgier than suspenders when only used for fashion purposes. Neither are inappropriate to wear within reason in all age spaces. Find another excuse to drag explicit fetish gear into the specifically non-sexual fashion. Another idiot took the opportunity to say that they love the cord and not everyone had to be flouncy, sweet, and traditional, which is why they love lovely lore. A statement that is 2 parts head trauma and 1 part sheer Lolita at heart because it appears that this person has never heard of goth or punk Lolita at all, 2 styles that I would never describe as flouncy or sweet. Information that would likely be wasted on this poster given that they have the sheer audacity to drag a perfectly innocent Lolita into this den of iniquity. First, keep Lovely Lore's name out of your mouth. Second, there is no way in hell she would appreciate being lumped in with this degenerate who posts sex gear for minors to see. And third, if you actually think a truly experimental Lolita like Lore can be compared to some crop top wearing fetishist who can't even match their blacks, then this maybe isn't the fashion for you. Please exit out the door labeled "Stop drinking your stupid juice" and frack thoroughly in the direction of off. Another commenter came forward to say that fetish gear has a history with Gothic fashion, like that was remotely relevant to Lolita. Putting electric tape over your nipples and a thong on can be considered goth too. Lolita has rules for a reason, and unless you're about to argue that the previously mentioned strings over your nether regions count as EGL, all your whining how fetish gear and goth like to hold hands is meaningless so long as this fashion has even the slightest sense of independence. Neither Eastern nor Western goth fashion can weigh in on Lolita because they are not Lolita. My apologies for stating the obvious. I like to think the goth community is smarter than this, but it would seem this corrosion actually applies to whatever region of the brain processes basic thought. A statement that is the perfect usher for a comment praising the cord with, quote, "It's only by pushing the limits of fashion that it can evolve, because we love it so much when sissies do it." And any man that tried to wear the same harness on their face would get thrown out of this community in an instant, and any person who thinks that including obvious fetish gear and exposing the members of this fashion to it without their consent counts as an evolution is welcome to devolve into a protozoa and go back to the puddle of scum where they belong. A sentiment that is echoed by a Lolita who had the lucidity to tell them that this isn't pushing boundaries, this is literally not Lolita. A few more idiots slobbered atop the floor that OP walked on, and finally, Finally, a completely different commenter weighed in with a concise essay that every kink licker in that thread needed to hear but probably won't read, because literacy implies that there's more than lint and a couple of paper clips between their ears. We're going to call this brave contender Cora, and Cora essentially opened up by explaining how the Lolita community has struggled with being associated with Nabokov and fetishes because of the name. Too many wrongly associate our fashion with sex already. OP is new to the fashion and might not understand that. The content of OP's Instagram is not helping. Lolita and kink should be entirely separate. Even Era Lolita is modest by mainstream standards. OP's core doesn't fit within the boundaries of Lolita at all. And again, for people saying that there's fetish stuff in the GLBs, Cora would like to remind them that it's called the Gothic and Lolita Bible, and it covers multiple fashion subcultures. You filthy casual twits, can you even fucking read? Oh wait, we already covered that. The Microsoft Office assistant was more intelligent, I swear to God. Okay, the last bit was my own creation, but Cora's point still stands, and while we're on the topic, let me remind you for just a moment of the part where they mentioned OP's Instagram. An Instagram that OP had originally linked in the original post. An Instagram that contains a panty shot of said OP with a Nabokov quote, and another picture of them posed sexually with a teddy bear between their legs, along with the nauseating text, "I am your Lolita." Dressed like the wrong Lolita, if you get what I mean. I swear I can't make this shit up. We are dealing with a literal Nabokov-style Lolita fetishist of the fuck no variety, meaning this is the most stereotypical nightmare the Lolita community could ever have come to life, and yet half the community has taken time out of their day to defend this fetishist as the fucking future of Lolita fashion. Which would be disappointing enough without what happened next. Because when the mods finally arrived, it wasn't to do what was right. It was to silence opposition. Any thread that wasn't overtly kissing the kinkster's ass was nuked without warning, and when the mod reopened commenting, it was to say that they had had some secret meeting and decided that the post was just fine. They said that any future derailing was getting deleted, a sentence that can be translated to, people who actually give a shit about sex gear being shoved into Lolita fashion are getting deleted because they said so. A disturbing turn of events that finally brings us to the true point of this installment. For ease of understanding, we're going to call this mod Sharon. And to really get a look at the type of content that Sharon thinks is inappropriate to post a closet of frills, we'll begin with the comments she deleted. Zool knows they must have been truly horrid if they were worse than the fetish wear that she allowed to stay up. Perhaps some kind of personal attacks or slurs were employed. If by personal attacks you meant stating that the community has worked its ass off to keep EGL away from misappropriation by preverts, and slurs you meant saying you shouldn't call fetish gear Lolita, kinksters do not have the community's consent to display their sex wear, and the mod should probably come to terms with basic common sense and keep that shit out of Lolita, because if someone wore this oral dick holster to a meetup, people would be fracking horrified. A bit of embellishment at the end there on my part, but the commenter's point remains the same, an assertion that is backed up by the OP themselves in another thread admitting that they wouldn't wear this to a meetup given the context. Meaning the OP knows it isn't appropriate for a mixed age audience, which makes one wonder how in the 9 circles of hell it's appropriate for Closet of Frills as a group, minors and all. Top it off with OP admitting that their face harness is clearly fetish inspired, with bondage aesthetics being all the more damning. Tell me again, Sharon, how this cord is appropriate for a group with actual goddamn children in it. Several more comments calling Sharon out for their clearly biased mod tactics in favor of the exploitative fetishist were removed because this person has no stomach for anything other than abject sycophancy, including this entirely polite protest as to the arguable harm OP stood to do to the community. Another comment expressing similar disagreement was torched for crimes against Sharon's tragically thin skin, at which point Sharon told everyone to stop talking and threatened to remove and mute anyone who disagreed with her in a move that really showed the community just how much she cares about their concerns. She moved on to deleting a comment from a minor for the grievous offense of expressing discomfort with seeing OP's fetish cord in the group, a move that I want you to remember, and topped all that off with claiming that no one was banned or removed for any comments made in the thread, even though we know that isn't true given several sources who have said they can no longer even see the group. Muting someone just means they can't comment, so either Sharon kicked people out because their valid concerns conflicted with her frilly god complex, or we're looking at a serious case of Zuckerberg's cat. And all in service of protecting a person who set out to start a quote, flame war in Closet of Frills in the first place. Congrats on Closet of Frills for playing itself. Guess it's not that far removed from the playing with oneself that is likely the chief priority of their prized bridled cow. An image that leads us to the final part of this installment, wherein a motivated soul tries to reach out to Sharon in private messages, and what follows is going to be a basic summary of the more important points, because it was hard enough to slog through her logic the first time around, and I've made you suffer enough as it is. We're going to call our good Samaritan Tina. I'm going to make this as quick as possible, and Tina makes first contact, expressing quote, serious concerns as to the clusterfrackery, especially when it comes to deleting comments from minors. Sharon dodges the point about minors entirely in favor of a wall of text, says she does a lot of quote, safety checks to ensure no one is trying to take advantage of the group, that they've had a lot of fetishists and sissies invade before, and they remove and block them as soon as possible, which is laughable given that they're totally fine with a literal Lolita fetishist. Said they spoke with said fetishist to determine their reasons for joining the group, and determined a Nabokov-style kinkster was just fine to have around as long as they don't bring their interest into the group, even though they immediately did with the dick holster on their face, and imparted that said OP even agreed to run future cords by them beforehand to avoid similar issues, because we all know how well that worked out the first time, what with the mods deciding that the fetish cord was just fine and fuck anyone who disagrees. Tina counters, saying that a facial schlong sling isn't just any accessory to be compared to a choker or harness, is forced to bring up the concerns of subjecting children to such things again because Sharon is ignoring it on purpose, and concludes with the revelation that several minors had spoken with Tina directly about their discomfort with seeing the cord in the group, asking again why Sharon saw fit to censor minors. A tactic that had absolutely no effect on Sharon, given that she answers Tina by comparing ye old Dickface to wearing a heart choker or kinky boots. There are no words for this level of ass backwardsry. No, a heart choker is not at all reminiscent or equal to phallus-friendly face gear, and unless those boots are festooned with dildos, I do not see the similarity between these overly steep footwear and a head harness that the wearer has already admitted is not appropriate for the public. Kinky boots are not kinky without the right context. Heart chokers are just fracking chokers without the same. While conversely, there is no goddamn scenario where this thing doesn't look like some kind of fetish wear. You don't even need any kind of fracking context to tell. That is, unless your name is Sharon and you've come down with a serious case of Munchausen's by fetishist. Got a little into the weeds there, I know, but we continue with Sharon finally addressing her deleting the minor's comment, only to say that said comment from the quote, possible minor was clearly bait because there's pudding where her brain is supposed to be. I'd say all you had to do to know it was a minor was read the fracking comment stating they were a minor, but then again, we're talking about a person who thinks heart chokers and dick holders are the same, so we may as well concede it as a lost cause. Sharon goes on to complain that their inbox would be full of angry people crying censorship if they deleted the kinkster's post, as if that was at all more important than protecting the community, before moving to claiming that Closet of Frills was never geared towards minors and they prohibit children as members. A statement which is bullshit, since the group's own rules specify that one need only be 13 to enter. Sharon quickly pivots to claiming that teenagers aren't children, which finally allows us to come full circle in Nabokov land. Congrats, preverts, you've got one mod on board that doesn't consider the group you prey on to be children at all. In all seriousness, this level of splitting hairs to save face is disappointingly pathetic. Sharon doubles down on her bruised ego by essentially telling Tina she can leave Closet of Frills if she doesn't like it, and Sharon stands by her decision. All attempts to reason with them fall on deaf ears from that point out, and it is at this point that we must consider where this leaves us as a fashion community. The complete lack of concern for group safety or even basic reasoning on the part of the Closet of Frills mods is entirely unacceptable. Worse still, the mod responsible stance on what counts as a child is ridiculously out of line with anyone who has the most basic grasp on reality. And if their obstinate defense of a Nabokov-style kinkster that represents everything the Lolita community strives so hard to differentiate itself from is anything to go by, it is clear that they are more concerned with the letter of their law than the spirit that should have taken priority. You should not get to bring fetish gear into our community just because a mod thinks your face harness occupies some kind of heart choker loophole. The protection of the spirit of Lolita fashion as a completely non-sexual form of feminine expression, safe and inclusive offensive for asexual and underage persons should always come first. And the very idea that the mod team would ruthlessly spit upon those principles in defense of a fetishist writ large, the fetish community, that has time and again been known to take whatever inch you give them and immediately claim a mile, is the type of behavior I expect from people too concerned with making things easy for themselves to stand up against the heat they'll get from the dime a dozen kinksters who think they're owed space to use the Lolita community as they wish. For frack's sake, this is the same mod team that has deleted entirely inoffensive casual chords in the past. But throw a Holy Lantern replica on with your favorite dick holder and I guess you're good to go. I'd say it's high time certain people decided if their backroom decisions reflect what's best for the community. Because that's all the time we have for tonight. This has been Tyler. You've been watching Scarfing Scarves. And before you leave this channel for the last time, unsubscribe and go cry to the nearest kinkster that your poor fifis weren't catered to by the mean old Lolita. I'd like to thank my patrons for making this agonizing deep dive possible. I blame you specifically for having the image of Kinky Cow-chan stuck in my brain for at least a week. And should you like to join their number, you can head over to patreon.com/lastweeklolitanews for more things that are better left behind 6-inch steel. It's best to BYOB. Thanks again, guys, and I'll catch you next time.